Howdy partners, and welcome to A Journey into Joinery Part 1, the Sharpening. So I've got laid out in front of me the tools that I usually use to sharpen my chisels and my plane blades. I won't bring out the Tormek that I've got hidden in the corner. I'm focusing on hand tools in this series of videos, so that's a machine. I can't use it. I've got a Veritas honing guide. I've got a Trend dual-sided diamond stone, 300 one side, 1000 on the flip side. And I've got two Japanese water stones, a 4000 and a 6000 grit. On the diamond stone, I always use the Trend lapping fluid. Seems to be very good. Definitely stops the stone clogging and works extremely well. I've got some other cheaper diamond stones here that I don't tend to use. I'm really not sure why I've still got them, but there we go. And I've got a teeny tiny small woodpecker square so that I can check I'm honing it at 90 degrees. I don't want to get tied up in whether we should be using one angle or another. I tend to sharpen at 25 and then I'll put a slight increased angle on the chisel or the plane blade right at the end, probably on the 6000 stone, just to give it an extra wee bit. Apart from that, I'm good. My cleaning regime always starts with the back of the blade or the chisel. The reason for that is if there are any pit marks or bad scratches in the back, I need to get rid of them before I can start sharpening and polishing the front. So I have my 1000 grit stone here. Put some lapping fluid on, and I'm simply going to lay the chisel flat, make sure the fluid's all over the surface, and then I'm going to rub to and fro just on the front third of the back of the chisel. And there's two things I'm looking for. One, to see that all of the new scratches I'm making are right the way across the back, therefore ensuring that the back is flat. And two, to make sure that there aren't any digs, pits or deep scratches in the back that would affect the sharpening of the front. Hopefully that made sense. Excuse me. I think it goes without saying, the more often you do this, the less time you'll spend at each reconditioning. If you leave it as long as I have, then you end up with a bigger job, and I've no one else to blame but me, which is kind of annoying. So I've got some marks here that don't look as if they've been touched yet by the action that I've been doing. I can see the side to side motion here, but not there. Let me change my glasses. Aha. Yeah, so I need to do a little bit more work because this looks like it's a bit of a hollow. So now I've got the dip back here, but I can see the marks from my 1000 grit stone are going right the way across the front. So I'm good with that for the back. So my back's flat. Now I can move on to the front. So for the front, I use this darling device, which I do seem to battle with from time to time. The instructions say that you merely locate this on there and tighten it down and it self-aligns. On such a wide chisel, it'll be really easy to see whether it is aligned or not. Certainly looks aligned. So I've got it set to 25 degrees here. So on here you choose either the red, the yellow or the green set of marks you're going to work with. So I'm on the yellow and I've chosen 25 degrees. So you open up the mouth. There we go. Slide your blade in and then clamp it firmly against the side of the support whilst you lock down the back. With the back locked, slide the support out and we are good to go. So with this, I keep, in this case, nice wide chisel. I can get 4 fingers on the front to keep an even pressure on both sides of the chisel, and I've got a little thumb rest at the back so I can keep a good even pressure on the whole of the, what should we call it, device. So now, fairly light touch, and my aim is to try to not fall off either the front or the back of the stone, which I must admit I've done on a few occasions. Now that looks to me to be out a little. Let's try a bit more. I've frozen the shot so that I can draw your attention to the angle that I'm now honing onto the chisel, which is the correct one. The previous angle that I put on it, I can only imagine I wasn't paying attention, or possibly under the influence of alcohol at the time. Hopefully not. So I'm gonna have to change to the 300 grit side and completely regrind the 25 degree angle right the way across and down through to the front. That's going to take quite a bit of time, so I'll speed this section up and reduce your pain. Hopefully you can see that. I'll tilt it up and down until I find the right angle, and then I'll freeze it in post. But I've got the whole of the surface now completely flat. There is a tiny, teeny, weeny bit there, but it's back from the edge. And my hands are tired, so I'm quite happy with that. Now I'm going to flip the stone over and polish out the scratches that I've made with the 300 grit side on the 1000 grit side. But before I do, I need to make sure I remove any debris or 300 grit sized particles from both the device and the chisel, so that it doesn't contaminate the 1000 grit side. So a little bit more of the same, but thankfully much less.
I think that should be sufficient.
Let's pop the other glasses on a minute. There we are. So that looks beautiful. Now what I want to do is just get rid of that burr on the back. So that's my chisel reconditioned. Now I can sharpen it. Okay, so I've cleaned up all of my mess from using my diamond stone, and I'm just taking out my 4000 grit water stone. It's been soaking in the water for quite some time, so it's nice and damp. So it's a very similar approach in as much as I'm going to do the back first and then I'm going to do the front. Hopefully you can see that. Have a bit of fresh tissue. And I can already see where we're polishing to here, here and here. So just a little bit more. I'm not really worried about this here. I just want that bit of the front there to be as shiny. You should also check out Rob Cosman's video on sharpening. I've got to be said, I hold the man in very high regard. He's an absolute master of the hand tools, and he uses steel rule technique. I can't remember whose technique it is, but anyway, check out Rob Cosman's channel. So I've now got polish all the way around the outside. So now I can move on to the front. So on the water stones, this differs because I'm not going to use the honing guide. What I'm going to do is stand thus, so I'm back a bit, because I'm going to rock back on my balls of my feet. I don't want to move my arms because I'm not a past master at sharpening. I can merely get it to where I need it to be. So I rest the chisel on the stone. I support the weight of the chisel with my right hand, but I keep the chisel flat on this 25-degree surface using my left hand, and then I'm going to keep my arms locked where they are, and I'm just going to rock back on my feet whilst dragging the chisel backwards. I'm sure if I were to do this more often, I would develop the ability to not look like I'm drunk. Oh, Lord only knows, I could kill a beer. Actually, a cup of tea. Kill a cup of tea. And that is all we need. So you should see from that that if you keep your chisels in a reasonable condition, this would be just your little bit of reconditioning that you'd need to do every project, instead of the mammoth task I've had to do because I've forgotten them. So that's 4,000 done, and now the final stage with the 6,000 stone. So exactly the same as before, I want to make sure there's nothing left on my chisel from the 4,000 grit. And I know my 6000 clean, so same again. And once again, right, and lastly, what I like to do is just a couple of strokes, chisel nice and flat so you know you're square on the stone, and then just raise it up a degree just to put that extra edge on the front. And we have, in my opinion, a chisel that will be sharp enough to cut anything you want to cut with it, hardwood and soft. So last job before I put my stones away is to flatten them. You can do this before you sharpen or after. I like to do it after so that next time I take them out I haven't got to worry about it. Job's a bobby. So there you have it, my sharpening regime, made incredibly longer by virtue of the fact that I didn't look after my chisels and haven't been near them for God knows when, so consequently they were a mess. Normally, if you look after your chisels and keep them in a reasonable condition, then a normal reconditioning would be as little as 10 strokes on the back, 10 on the front, 10 on the back, 10 on the front, wipe, and you're away again, just to keep that edge. If you tilt the chisel that extra little bit right at the end as I do, then each time you'll be forced to tilt it a little more, but the increments are very small, and I wouldn't expect you to have to resurface the entire front of your chisel for, well, a long time, obviously depending on your frequency of usage. So a double-sided trend diamond stone, 300 grit and 1000 grit, and a bottle of lapping fluid, I think set me back around the £80 mark. Excuse me, all the links will be below. 4000 grit stone and a 6000 grit stone I think are around 50 or 60 pounds each, but again, links will be below. Set of Marple chisels, I'll put the link to below. And I can't remember if this was a one-time tool or not, but if I can't find the woodpecker, then I'll find an alternative very small chisel so that you can check to make sure you're honing yours at 90 degrees. And of course, not forgetting the Veritas honing guide, probably the most expensive component on the table. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I hope you've enjoyed it to some extent, even though it could have been rather monotonous in the middle with all the sharpening. But it is the precursor to part 2 coming up soon, hopefully, which will be our first joint. And as mentioned before, that's going to be the much aligned, much forgotten, maligned, it should always be aligned, the much maligned butt joint. I hope to see you then. Thank you for watching, and ta-ra.